right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Chicago and Milwaukee Bruce City Power Platform user groups. Tommy will be our speaker tonight. There is no personal Wi-Fi code tonight from Tommy, so
That's right.
For those of you who have been seeing us this morning, welcome back and happy to have another conversation with you guys.
Why would they have seen us this morning?
That's a great point. Tommy, why might some people have seen us?
You're going to steal my thunder, man.
I'm not. I'm trying to
I got a
tee
whole
it up.
slide in it.
I got a whole slide for it.
Come on. Steal my thunder. Hey, guys, welcome to the Chicago Power BI user group. Not to be confused with a podcast that may or may not be out there for a month now that no one knows about. So, hey, guys, I think everyone can hear us. So we had some audio problems right before this where it literally said bitrate is 0, which is never a good thing.
Yep.
So it sounds like everyone can hear us. Sorry, Matthew Roach again. Since we're doing the Chicago thing, we're just going to do some quick updates on the Chicago user group, on any Power BI updates, which are unfortunately none because they have been delaying until next week. And then just a just kind of what we're going to do tonight. If it's your first time joining, we're adopting a lot of what the Bruce City does in terms of format, and then more content and announcements. So real quick, because that definitely doesn't work here.
I'll transition over to the screen here. So your screen share is working, Tommy. So you're up on the screen share, and your slide for Chicago Power BI user group is on and running.
Cool. So glad to see this is not working. Oh man, that's awesome when you get a little clicker that doesn't work. Anyways, so that's fine. So again, agenda, really no major Power BI updates in terms of what you can download and use. A few things we'll go over, some new content, and then we'll go right into the session. So in case you missed it, Microsoft Build happened. They announced some really cool things coming this year. One of the major ones was automated insights and a lot around automated aggregations, just really amping up their enterprise. So if you missed all those announcements, you can go to the Power BI blog. You can ask Chuck Sterling. Just call him. I'll put his number in after. I know he's on the call, so
or he's in chat right now.
Or he's in chat, so just ask him.
Yeah.
And forget this at all. And a few other things. The May report server came out. The June report builder was released. Salesforce, you can now embed Power BI in it. And the June 21 desktop and the June update will happen next week.
Hopefully.
So here's a neat announcement. Love the Chicago Power BI user group, but wish I talked a lot less. Then you're in luck. Me, Mike, and Seth have actually released a new podcast. Obviously centered around Power BI. How great it would have been if it's like around dieting. So we started this podcast from really every user group meeting that we've had, or anytime we had a chance to talk, we always got into something. Not necessarily arguing, but it was always like, why do we do it this way? Or, just really passionate discussions. And after a while, we're all talking like, where does this exist? We're all very big proponents on the why. And, being in the Power BI space, we're people who know how to learn the how. We know how to do the how. And if we don't know it, we're going to learn it. So there's amazing content out there, Power BI tips, Guy in a Cube. There's so many, obviously Marco Russo on how to do things in Power BI. A lot of our conversations offline have always kind of centered around why is this the best approach? Does this actually make sense? And we wanted to put a podcast, some forum out there for conversations that we knew it wasn't just us. Any user group meeting we had, or speaking to any other person who's worked in Power BI for more than a week, these are conversations that you're actually having in the real world, in your organization, where you say, yeah, I can do this really neat DAX measure, and this is a really cool feature, but it's not being used. People are upset. I don't know how to do this. And those are all the things that are kind of like the other side of it that we felt that there wasn't a good platform for that. So that's what we kind of introduced was this the explicit measure podcast. We have episodes released every Tuesday and Thursday. We do a live stream in the mornings, so you can join the chat. But no, we're really, even if no one listens, we're still going to do it just because the conversations. I mean, we've jumped from
That's amazing.
The most heated discussion we had was about data flows, so that should put it into context.
Yeah,
And
yes.
so, and just for example, some of the other content we had is like, what does a Power BI process look like? Why aren't people using advanced analytics, QA anomalies? What's the deal with custom visuals? So
Yep.
those kind of ideas, like things that are applied to us, but again, how do we actually apply it? So Mike and Seth, I don't know if you want to say anything about the podcast as well.
Tommy, you summed it up very well here. It's a lot of fun. We're not trying to talk about features all the time. We're trying to talk about just fun activities, just in general around what desktop is doing, how we build things, what's your skill set need to be, just fun stuff. We're just trying to have fun and enjoy it. We laugh a lot. I would say that's something we did. This morning, if you joined us, we maybe had shed a couple tears or so.
Yeah.
It's some couple heartstrings tugging there. But I think I hope people are enjoying it. I've got a lot of good feedback that other people are enjoying the content for other MVPs as well. We now have an official mailbag. So if you go to powerbi.tips/explicit measures podcast, or there's actually a link on the homepage that you can go down and submit your ideas. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor FM, all kinds of other random things. And I'll let Seth talk now.
There were no tears. There were no tears. The wife was cutting onions for breakfast.
Yes, I get it.
That's good. Yeah, it's great fun. Great fun. Love the conversations, and yeah, you summed it up well, Tommy. We were having these conversations anyway, so to kind of light them up into the community is a good time, and so far people are enjoying it, and so are we, which is the whole point.
Yeah. Yeah, we basically kind of call like the Power BI water cooler. Like, what are other people more or less complaining about when you actually try to do this? But we try to be positive too. There's a positive spin on it. So yeah, so check it out. Hopefully, and spread the word. We're really excited about it. I think we have 15 episodes now that you can binge as to your heart's desire.
If you miss Tommy or you want to go to bed early, just turn it on. Tommy will just drone you to sleep.
We'll put you to sleep.
Put you to sleep. Put you to sleep. That's my goal tonight too. So
let's talk about list dot measures. Close your eyes.
Yeah. Your first parameter is no. All right. So that's kind of our main updates today. So it's again, if you guys have any questions about it, check it out. So let's kind of go into the main meat of today, and if I can actually find it, wherever it went.
I got to give you a hard time, Tommy. I see you're using a Power BI icon. That is 2 versions ago. Tommy.
I like that icon better.
I agree. It's a good icon, solid icon, but we got
icon.
We got to get you to pull it forward here, Tommy.
Which icon are you looking at? You're looking at the one on the start menu.
No, it's in your slide deck.
Oh yes. No, that's the best man. I'm not getting rid of that. Kidding me? That's the best. I already got the tattoo and everything. No, I do need to update that. Yeah, these are actually probably Chuck Sterling's template slides, so I'm not even kidding about that. So
that's amazing.
All right, guys. So thanks for coming, and let's kind of get into the meat, why you guys are here tonight, and as always, for every single Chicago Power BI user group, one thing I always like to say is thank you for coming. You guys are coming for work, after work, on a work week to learn more about work. And, it's always been very important to me, and, very passionate that I want to make it worth your while. So please provide feedback any way you can to the user group, anything that you want to talk about. Hopefully soon we'll be able to meet in person again. I did reach out to the Prudential building in Chicago to see when they'd be opening up or able to book rooms. Still no timetable on that, so we're still doing this for the foreseeable future. But thank you guys for coming, and it means a lot that we're providing content that's, again, why would you go after work to learn more about work? And we just want to make it worth your while. So thank you again. So with that being said, let's go into what we're talking about in a Power BI and a BI teams process. And we're kind of talking build, manage, and grow. When we're talking about process and we're talking about something you do in BI, you maybe got into data, data analysis or business intelligence because you really like numbers and really cool visuals. But little did you know that you actually had to deal with people a lot, and everything you do affects a lot of people all the time. So that means there's a lot of community, there's a lot of social factors that go into everything that we do. So unfortunately, I have to say, if that's not your cup of tea, business intelligence is going to cause some issues. But let's talk about how do we why do we do what we do? Besides building reports, besides publishing them and doing all these DAX measures, we have to have someone to be working towards. And so real quick agenda today is we're going to be talking about like what is a process when we're talking about what is an actual BI process, and more importantly, why are we focusing an entire month or entire month session on process? That's not a really fun word. It's not that exciting. And for an hour of this, what's the point? So let's talk about where that actually fits into our daily and our day-to-day responsibilities and that role in the what it plays in an organization. We'll go into some of the components of a successful process, and then we'll talk about each of those three build, manage, and grow processes that we outlined. Important to note, too, this is by no means an exhaustive list. We're not outlining every process that you should have. So if you come back to me and say, hey, I did everything in the slides, but there's still a lot of problems. Again, depending on your team, we don't have time to go into obviously everything, but we want to kind of highlight, in a sense, three pillars that you at least have to have. So let's talk about process. Yeah.
Build, manage, grow. Your mileage may vary. I think what I heard you said.
That's actually awesome. That's great. Your mileage may vary. Yeah. Things in the mirror may seem closer than they appear.
Things in the rearview mirror may be closer than they appear. So take it.
Yeah.
These are some good guidelines, but they're not all inclusive.
Right. So let's do the boring one first. Let's just talk about what's a process. So this is basically how you, your team, anyone who is building or authoring data through Power BI are communicating, developing reports, deploying them, sharing them, and consistently providing that value to the stakeholders. So, and it's just a set of rules and actions that are applied on a consistent basis. Again, boring definition, pretty straightforward, but it's really not that simple because there's so many more factors at play. It's not just doing an action over and over again, like build a report, send it out, add it to a production workspace, I'm done. You have to know, and you have to consider the how are we doing it, who's affected, and why in the world are we even doing this process over and over again? So any process that we're going to do in a BI team or in a BI setting should have at least, no matter what process that you put in place, just a few kind of elements. And one thing that I put at the top here for a reason is something that's consistent. It's almost like Power Automate workflow. It's nearly automated. When this happens, then we do this. When this changes, then we go back and do this. So something that is always reused and always applied. This workflows and these process has communication. So understanding who it affects and understanding the players involved. So if you have to change a certain measure or KPI in multiple reports, well, understand whose KPI that is. And also make sure how do we communicate to those stakeholders? We have to change the date. It's no longer order date. It's now payment date. and sometimes shipping date. And we're doing this because this reasons, we're deploying it this day. That can change the data. Something that Seth actually said in one of the user groups is you can't cheat it. It's always used, and we'll get into that. I'm not going to focus on it here, but it's something that's always universally applied. And is also understanding the variables in play. Again, if your CEO is asking you for a report compared to a sales rep's asking you to do a report, there's going to be a different approach, but at least keep the same structure. So no matter what process is in place, these are kind of the things that at least have to be at top of mind whenever you're establishing a process. But the most important thing to know is no process rules alone. There's not one process that is better, that serves a better purpose than any other process. And there's a reason for that. First off, again, why are we even implementing and talking about processes like this? It's not the end goal. We're not doing process just so we can have a really good process. There's a clear objective. There's a clear goal on what the process is going to do over time. It's helping users establish trust in the data, trust in when they can get a request in for a report, and also for them to actually rely on the data, and also for ourselves that we can manage updates, that we can manage expectations from stakeholders, from other users on how long it takes to develop a report. So again, it's this real focus on the more process in place, the more you stay true to it, you're establishing expectations for your team, for your organization, for your clients on when things can be delivered, the accuracy of it, and what it takes to change something. And you're building trust in the data where someone can rely on it. So without process, even if you have the best single process in the world, if there's no end goal on what you're trying to do, what's the success measure? How do you measure success of a certain process? You're going to drive right off a cliff. So there's a lot going on here in terms of, you know, uh, all the different things that you have to consider in any process. How do we know when we deploy a report? Should we implement something immediately? Should there be another process that should trigger from there? Do we know in everything that we do who's affected? If I update, let's say, give an example of my marketing campaigns, and I update the different digital platforms, and I just change the names. Well, who's that going to affect? And how? How is that going to affect the data? The certain way it's grouped by, and then two, how it's going to affect someone's performance. At the end of the day, all these, the Balance Act, the documentation, this continuous cycle is all about driving a data culture. People have trust, they have the expectations on what the data is going to provide them. They are going to rely on the data. They're going to make better decisions off of it. They're going to rely on you and the BI team for the gold standard. Because I promise you, if you're not the gold standard, a user will find somewhere else to go. And this, again, doesn't matter if you have one very, very solid process in place. If there's other places where the data breaks, where that communication breaks down, people will lose trust. So thanks to Mike Carlo on this, because he actually envisioned this for me. But basically, if you were to imagine what process is supposed to do, there's a delicate balance between expectation and trust that we should always be trying to grow, and again, for our stakeholders and organization. The more trust someone has, the odds are they have very clear expectations of what you deliver, the content that you can provide, and the time frame you can do it. And in that same way, that expectation builds that trust that we know what the data is showing us. This is all managed by having consistent processes.
I like how you quoted me there on the chart.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
Yes, even the asterisk in the title too. So I wanted to highlight it. So
thank you very much.
You're welcome. So we'll trademark it next. But so real quick. So then again, there's this balancing act in terms of who's going to the dance. And any one way to put it is, these expectations that become routine, almost boring, drive this trust. And why do we keep doing this? Why am I hammering down on consistency, structure, process? I'm tired of already saying that word, and we're 10 minutes in. But it's the point, because anyone who's worked in Power BI for more than a week knows very well that a single break in trust is probably the hardest thing to gain back from an organization or a group of users. Losing trust in the data in your reports, it is nearly impossible to get back to maybe where you were. If they can't rely on your data, they're going to go somewhere else to rely on data. If they can't rely on your data coming from Salesforce, they're going to download the Salesforce CSV file and make their own Excel file, because they can at least rely on that. They at least know where it comes from. Our job is to, in a sense, have them trust us that no, we know how to manage, model, and display this data in a way that's accurate. And also, again, all these moving parts. Without that trust and expectations, we may do something that is correct. Another department may do it in a way that they've always done it. If we're the source of truth, through trust, through expectations, people will rely on us. So even if you have things that are going right, again, people are hard to break from the norm. So users are always going to go where they can rely on data. If I was trying to look at the latest Major League Baseball standings and I went to MLB.com and the numbers, the wins and losses were all wrong, I'm probably not going to go to MLB.com anymore. I'll go to ESPN. I have no alliance to MLB.com. I'll go where it's accurate. And so will a user in a report, no matter how many neat features there are. So again, no process rules alone. Anything you put in place must consider who's involved, what other processes are affected by this, and what the clear objective is. So before we kind of move on, I don't know if there's any questions or anything in the chat.
There is not. That's a good break point. Looking through here, a couple things. No comments specifically around chat. There was actually a comment here. Andrew mentions, I remember in the last podcast, breaking expectations ruins them. And that reminds me of the comment I think we had around when someone asks you for a report. I need this ad hoc report. It's really quick. It's one off. And you say, can you fill out this ticket? Can you give me some more details? Can you, tell me what your insights are? When you kind of slow down a little bit and push them into a bit of a process, you're breaking some of those expectations of, oh, this should be a very fast turnaround. You can just whip this thing out in 2 minutes. And Power BI at the enterprise level can be kind of deceiving there in that space, because you can watch people drag modeled objects onto a page and like, oh, geez, the visuals just show up. That's easy. That's
Right.
super fast. But we didn't talk about bookmarks and how the UI looks, and we didn't talk about, is there complex DAX modeling that you want now, and like, oh, you wanted that measure as a column now? That's a different thing. We can't quite do that the way you thought it was going to be. So we have to think of another solution to like make it work for you, even though there are some limitations to the framework.
Yeah, I think the thing that stands out to me is, we look at it when we're building a report page, right? All the filter context on a report page, you have to understand the context of how you're deploying a report. Is this one of those scenarios where ad hoc and intermittent changes and switching back and forth with a business user is perfectly fine and acceptable, versus taking that same mentality into a much larger organization or a much wider used report where you have novice end users is a recipe for disaster, right? So you're establishing, the expectations part of that, where you actually think about the number of people impacted, what type of users they are. Like, that's solid advice, Tommy.
Yeah, and I think we've all been innocent or naive at certain points where we had a certain report. So it's like, well, could you just build it, but just filter out Europe? We just want to see North America, and we don't need the product category X. You're like, yeah, sure, we can do that. you
Next
you
week,
kind of build
hey,
up
can
that,
you bring
you
Europe
build,
back in?
but it's not. I think it's even worse. You kind of build that report, you
Yeah.
share it with them, and now all of a sudden someone else is looking at that, and they're like, "Hey, U.S. is down," and because it's filtering out,
Oh,
product X, Y, and Z,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
then they're reporting that to leadership, going, the numbers are wrong because they forgot that they asked for a certain product out or they didn't necessarily forget, but to them that's all they care
Out of sight,
about
out of
is
mind.
that context. So
Yeah.
they're seeing it down. Leadership doesn't know what this report is, and that little change without any communication. Now we have two reports that say total sales, but two very different numbers for the same place.
And you're talking a lot about something here that I think is going to become more and more important as this Power BI thing grows bigger. You touched on a point of data lineage. There's a whole data lineage that's going along with this. Like, and I was actually listening to some Databricks webinars. So Databricks did the Data and AI Summit recently, and all the videos are free, I think, until the end of the month, I think. So I was just watching some videos, and there's a whole bunch of like content around going with data lakes and building Databricks platform stuff and these really more modern architectures. And because of that, there's some really interesting principles that as a data leader we need to be thinking about. And one of those is this data lineage thing. Where's the raw table? What transformations are happening? Where are those happening? What does the view look like? What transformations are happening in the report? Where are the calculations? And we've added a lot of semantic layers on top, on top, on top, on top. And so for someone to trust the data, like, well, I can see the ERP application has 10. I expect the report to say 10. And through all those transformations, you got to like work your way back and say, and have confidence. Oh man, it's not as, when I was the report developer and I was building stuff for me, it's super easy. Like, I love Power BI. It's, no one else can bother me. I know it's right. It's good to go. Let's use it and move on. Like, building reports for other people is way more challenging.
And I mean, just this morning too, I was trying to develop another calculation, and if you put that calculation in a certain grouping in a certain context, it shows a different number. And this was just for me because I was trying to experiment with something. But that happens to us too. We're like, okay, the number looks great.
Yep.
Someone clicks on something, skews everything because we're already dealing with DAX. That's hard as it is. Like we already have that. We already have that to deal with. And sometimes we don't know what the output could be. And someone could be, downloading or exporting a visual file, or just kind of looking at it with a certain filter. And again, you have no idea, and you also have no idea if they're communicating this with other leadership. So all these things we have to think about, and from the technical side into the business side.
You overwhelm me, Tommy. All these things you think about, I don't know how you keep it all straight in your head. Literally,
it's because it's happened to me too many times.
The stuff literally
really
oozes out my ears because there's so much stuff to think about here. In some cases, I just wish there needs to be another easy button where I could just, oh wait,
if only you had a recording of this, Mike, that you could revisit at some point in time.
This is why we do these. So when I forget, I can come back and reference myself.
Yeah, too bad something like this wasn't available twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday. We're selling out. Okay.
Oh boy, you want to sell out.
Move on.
Contact Tommy at powerbi.tips if you need sponsorships or something. Moving on.
Again, part of this too is a lot of these situations. Again, you guys who are listening have probably dealt with something very similar and seared into your memory.
Yeah.
If it's not, I have no idea how it hasn't been left an indelible mark. So what we're going to go through next is, again, by no means an exhaustive list. It's not the whole dinner menu of process. And after the next 30 minutes, you guys will have everything you need. But what it is going to apply at least some very basic templates that at the very least should be something of consideration and being applied, whether, again, it's just you in the wilderness, you're part of a BI team, or you're part of a department data analyst team. We're dealing with clients. And we broke it up into, again, what I'm calling build, manage, and grow. So our build processes are basically, how do we develop our reports for users? How do we understand the requirements, the features, the data, the model, and turn that into something that can be visualized? That's something that can be consumed by users in an easy way. Our managed processes are, How do we maintain, how do we govern the content and keep it up to date and reliable? If there's any business rules that change, if a sales rep changes a different to a different region or their quota for the next year, how do we go through that? Are we making sure that people who are publishing reports are the people who should publish reports? And finally, how do we develop processes around allowing people to be engaged and empowered by the data? So their own training, their own understanding of what's available for them, what content's out there for them. And again, I want everyone to kind of keep in mind what we talked about before, that all these have a end goal. Having a good build process is not the end goal. Having a great managed process or processes is not the end success. It's all about establishing expectations and trust. So let's go into build. This is what I'm calling the foundation of our expectations, because one, we do this repeatedly. This is the easiest one to implement because it's something that's very ordinal and that's going to happen the most and repetitively. It's going to happen the most in your organization, and it's something that's going to be very easy to implement and also establish. So if you have no processes right now, or people don't care about some processes you have, this is a great place to start to begin to push back a little. And I say that with all the sincerity in the world, but I truly mean it. Where you building a report in 3 days, or when you're trying to get coffee and says, hey, it would be great, Jim, the manager, really needs this, so can you get that by Thursday? Yeah, sure. That none of that happens anymore. So you can build accurate and reports that are actually going to be used more than a week out. So this is a great place to kind of build what your team's trying to do and say, yeah, this is how we work now. This is how this is the way the BI team's going to work. So our build process, this is the start. This is the best place to begin to cultivate that the BI team works around a process. To put it nicely, where dreams become reality. This is where any request starts. Again, the easiest, because it has a very set trigger point, because it's someone has to request a report or someone has to ask an idea for a report, but there's a actual trigger that's going to kind of kick off these processes. So a lot happens before we even open up Power BI. And from the user group meetings that we've had and the networking that we've done, from conversations with other Power BI authors and pros out there, this is sometimes the hardest one. And yet it's the easiest thing to begin to establish, because your reports come from Slack or Teams and email. Someone comes up to you, your manager comes up to you, says, we really need this. And there's no pushback there, and there's just a lot going on at once. And there's a lot to handle, but there's a lot that should happen. And probably the most important aspect of establishing trust, where people know, oh, I have to do this now, is before any Power BI file is even opened. So what I'm going to show next is, and kind of run through fairly quickly. And if you guys have any questions on the steps here, I'm happy to kind of expand more. But I want to show what a basic template will look like for any report build, any new or update to a report would look like. So number one, someone has to request a report. Pretty straightforward. However, where are they requesting the report? How are they requesting it? I really want to challenge people who have not thought about this before. Do you have a centralized location or a repository, a ticket system where people can submit requests? Where does that occur? How do you know what submissions or what ideas people have? This has to be your starting point, and nothing should happen until this is satisfied. If your company has a ticket system, if you build a Power BI app, it has to go through there. Again, unless it's your CEO or it's an emergency where there's a lot more people involved that understand the urgency of it. Everything else, and anytime anyone asks you for a report, it's like, yeah, just submit a ticket to X, Y, and Z, and we'll start the process from there. and beginning to say that to people where they're like, well, that's not how it was. Like, what happened before? I used to be able to just ask you, like, well, we're starting this to provide more accurate and insightful reports. So there has to be a set defined trigger point. Someone, again, do you have a centralized point where someone can submit a request? Um, I think it was Kevin Arnold actually wrote back when I were promoting tonight's user group a really great article, just that a data scientist was doing about they do any report request that comes in. They built a custom form, and it's basically like, is this a new report request? Is it a data pull? Is it a an ad hoc request? And basically goes through like, why are you requesting this? What is the business value? As Mike would say, as Mike and Seth would say, any request that comes through that's worthwhile, is it going to make money or save money?
Yes.
So yeah. So, but really, like, we shouldn't just work on everything. Just because someone requests something does not mean it deserves to exist in our organization. Does it provide actual business value? And this is a point too, as you begin to establish expectations where you can get a request and from someone go, this is a shortcut. We can do something else for you, but we're not going to build a report for this. It's not a company-wide value. It's not going to provide impact at the end of the day. So that's number one. We're still on number one, moral, which again, I cannot stress enough, is where you must start. I think, obviously speaking, you should always start with one if you're going an ordinal ranking, but especially here. Another thing, do you actually assess those requests that come through? Again, the business value. Do we have a report that's already like this? What KPIs are they asking for? Can we just build on top of, add another page to an existing report? So going through that before, again, any files open. One thing that I am seeing more or hearing more, but I know that's not universally taken, is as soon as you say, okay, this is a report we're going to work on, one of the most impactful and probably the most helpful process that we put in place is any significant report that's going to be worked on, we do a scoping and discovery call. And we basically say, okay, we identify who the stakeholders are, we meet with them, and we go through a series of questions. And half of it's not even about data. It's, okay, who's this for? Who's this going to affect? Why are we asking for this? Like, what's the background of this request? Is it maybe there's a campaign that launched, or we're spending a lot of money here? All those little, in a sense, those key phrases, keywords help us build the report too. One, helps them kind of walk through what they need, but also helps us as we begin to understand how are we going to develop this report. So we can provide a report that's like, okay, they think they're losing money. I should probably highlight that in the report if they're losing money. So going through this interview process and then going through, what's our KPIs? Do we have context? Are there, is there a target number? And what features or functionality do you want? How do you want to explain the data by? After your discovery call, we write off a little project roadmap that's basically outlining, here's what we talked about, here's what we're going to build, here's the KPIs, here's what's important. And milestone one, and nothing starts, not one report, not one iota of time starts until that stakeholder signs off on that document. Again, it could be in the ticket system saying, yes, this is good. Because now you're aligned on expectations. Because they said, yes, this is what we need. This is their chance to say, I don't think that's the right track, or we're going the right direction. From there, and again, at this point, if you have a set process in place that has been working well, I'm not going to say this is the best way, but what I have found, Paul Turley wrote an article that about basically like, doing Power BI process the right way. And you talked about the sandbox phase. And I think it helped me, especially because I can be I think a lot of us, as you start to build something, go, oh, can it do this? And, what if I had a DAX measure that did this? And then you show this report that I have no idea what they're looking at. So a sandbox phase is really meant to be this, what we call iterative feedback or interactive feedback, where you meet with the stakeholder on a weekly basis with the Power BI report file, the desktop file open on your computer, and you basically say, hey, we've shown you, here's 3 different pages, 3 different views based on our conversations. Is this the right track? And you're just trying to garner them to provide their feedback. I always look for in these in these conversations where someone starts looking and begins to go, that's good. What if you did this? Could you do that? If I hear that, I know we're going to build a good report. And then we just show them in real time. Yeah. So we can group by the medium. We can group by the platform just like this. And so that's important. So you understand what's important to them. So we're not building things that are unnecessary in this report. Once we get depending on how long it takes, and again, the significance, the size, we understand how we're going to develop the narrative. We understand our KPIs. We get a sandbox sign off. It can be as simple in your ticket system or in an email somewhere that's documented. Okay, we're going to start working on our development, our labels. One other thing to note on the sandbox too, you let them know it's ugly. The labels, the colors, it's the layout, it's not intended for that right now. And even the data may be off. We're just trying to show an example of what's available to you. And then we'll work on qualifying our DAX measure, the KPIs, make sure it's accurate, putting the labels on. But you let them know, and you give them access in a development workspace. This is just meant to show you the possibilities, the potential. Sandbox sign off, and then we begin our development. We do our Q&A on the measures. If you're working with other teams where you're dealing with a universal KPI that affects multiple departments, or it's a corporate KPI, understanding that how to make sure that you calculate that correctly and in the right context. Once we do our development, there's a gold review, basically going through, here's our pretty much neat and tidy, ready to go report. Walk through, see if there's any tweaks to go, and then there's our sign off saying we're ready to move production. But now we're not done, because this kicks off another process. And a lot of people don't think about this. They think the report's done once they deploy it, once it's in a production workspace. But man, if you stop there, you're cutting that report, and all the time you spend very, very short, because no one knows it's available, and no one knows how to use it yet. So how do you actually do that deployment? One thing that has worked incredibly well, that we've implemented, is any significant report that has more than 7 users we do a roadshow. I ask the stakeholder who's going to get access to it. If it's in a Power BI app, I still ask, who's on your team, or who's going to be really looking at this. And we do a 1-hour roadshow going through, hi, I'm the BI team, or this is the BI team. We build reports. This is how to request a report. And then you do a demo. Ask the stakeholder, hey, can you give me 3 scenarios that I can walk through the report? Like, I'm Jeff. Jeff wants to look at this. Here's how he would do it. And you get those 3 scenarios, you show it to them real time. Then finally, it's documented and it's managed. People have that recording available to them, and you provide that support. So that's a lot. And that's just one road looking at just build. But we could spend the rest of the meeting today just talking about build. But I did want to focus a good amount of time on this, just because, again, this is one of the things that you're going to be doing the most, and it's the quickest. I don't want to say the quickest, but it's the most direct way to establish expectations, and it's usually a lot of places where things go wrong. So I'll pause here.
Yeah.
See if there's anything. See what you guys think. See if there's anything in the chat.
Good question. So trying to adjust some audio things so I'm a little bit louder in the ears compared to the other thing. I think it's a little bit better. Andrew asks us, is documentation is the last stage here? Do you also do like a one-pager introduction before the project sign off in stage 4?
That's an awesome question. So yeah, so that project sign off can be customized as you want, and we usually have like a summary. Yeah, we have like, I don't want to call it an executive summary, but it's an introduction to what this report is and what purpose is going to serve. So that's a great way to put it. That's kind of like your introductory to what the report is.
I like that.
You don't necessarily have to do a 1 page, because things will change, but even if it's just a paragraph.
Yeah. I don't have any other questions. Andrew says, Coolio, thanks. He digs it.
Digs it. So yeah, if you guys have any questions as we go along, please just put them in the chat. Mike and Seth are checking, and we want to answer whatever we can. So
I feel like here this is a nice high level diagram. I feel like, Tommy, we need to produce like a PDF of like some of these things. Like, you ask a lot of questions there, like who is this going to, where is it the report required? There's a lot of good key questions. I feel like for me, just personally even, I'd like to have like a checklist of this stuff that I would just kind of rattle off and say, oh, you have a report request? Here's the PDF, or here's the documentation that I would go build my Microsoft Forms on top of.
Yeah.
So I could just hand them like, hey, to your point, right? Yeah, someone's saying yes, PDF please. Agreed. Okay, so I think that's a task for someone. Yeah, we'll see if we can get together and spitball some ideas and put together like a list, a document, something that we can do to kind of wrap up some of these questions. Because I think you're right. I love a lot of these user request reports, but I want some tangible pieces of this. Like, I get it, but like I want to like, what is our comprehensive list of what those questions might look like, and then we'll update them on over time. You know what? I got a better idea. Let's make this like a GitHub repo, and we'll push the community to update and add their own questions that they would ask as well. And so we can just do like a little markdown file on GitHub. Let me kick it over here to the people who are on the chat. Do you guys feel like a GitHub repo or like a markdown file or a file that documents these questions would be relevant to you, so we can kind of as a community grow and add questions and refine that? I know the delay is here like about 30 seconds, so I'll let that.
That's actually a good way, because the one thing with the PDF, and to be honest, why I talk about process and I've done sessions on governance is because at the time there wasn't a lot of resources on, like, there was a lot on the how, but like, or the what it is and why it's important, but like, how do you actually do it? Like, show me a blueprint.
Yep.
Compared to like, there's no template.
Yep.
But the thing is too, is every organization has their own variables and their own, their own parameters that very much can skew this. So a PDF makes it very difficult because depending on the size of your team, the size of the organization. So
dig it. All right, everyone's overwhelmingly saying, all two of them, yes, we're in. We will help contribute questions, and we will also like to see it on GitHub as a repo, so we can go download the assets from that. So that sounds like a great idea. I love it.
Awesome.
So we will attempt to throw some questions together. We'll put the screws to Tommy to have him produce more content, because he's not busy enough as it is already. So.
Going back to our conversation this morning.
Yeah, when we were crying about how much we work on Power BI. Yes, I know.
Let me just
Thank you.
text my wife real quick.
Yeah.
Oh, she's gonna
see you later.
See you later. No, I do think that's a great idea, and just something that's living that can be, I think to be honest, when it's more freelance like here, because without knowing the business, the company, the players involved, the decision tree in my head gets very skewed, where I like that design part I struggle with. But I have that scope obviously at where I work, so it's very straightforward. But even then, to try to actually visualize, if this happens, then this whole other workflow, I just imagine something that would be more confusing than the actual steps. So anyways, we can work on that together. So
I'll help you simplify the complicated spaghetti that's in your head, Tommy.
Like, as 3 of these slides have been like 10 minutes of me talking, you went, what if you just said this? I said, perfect. Triangle it is.
Triangle it is. Yes, triangle. Awesome.
Sums it up.
All right. Back over to you, Tommy. The slide deck is up again. All right, you could move on.
So all of this, the same thing, but no process rules alone. We have a great build process now. That's awesome. We're so happy for you, but it does not exist alone and will not be successful alone. So manage where processes go to die, or where we can build trust. So this is a tricky one, because this is one where I don't think we give a lot of time and attention to, because it's not necessarily one that there's a definite trigger. With build, someone requests a report, I start building a report. It's very straightforward. Manage is one that can be a little more gray in terms of when do you actually start a process, when do you end it, how do you know what process to do, and who's involved. So a lot of times these can be overlooked. You may do it once and then forget about it. But really, the managed processes are the ones where we build trust. If build is about expectations, manage is about trust. And let's kind of go into why that is. So this managed process it's not linear. It's not, again, this set like build where we go from idea to report. It's more, again, all really based on the situation that you're in. If you're in IT, if you're on the BI team, if you're alone by yourself at a company, however it works, there's going to be certain variables that, in a sense, dictate when a process and how a process looks. So these are more reoccurring, and they're usually based on certain dates or certain situations that occur. But really, managed is about governance, and it's the conversations that you continually have about, who's involved and what's changing. So it's going through. It's basically if building is building your deck outside, manage is cleaning your basement. So just as important, but it doesn't seem that way until you need something from the basement. So because it's going through all the players involved, you may build a report. It's great. Everyone's high-fiving you. But then 3 other people you had no idea have just published a report to a workspace that you didn't know existed. That's kind of the same data as yours, but they did not do it correctly. Now you have a conflict. And now, no matter how good your report is, it's not going to be seen as reliable because, well, they're BI too. Why isn't their data right? Whose data is right? I can't trust anything. The reason I say it that way, because I've heard that, like that same dialogue where someone I was trying to talk, but they literally went through that process of, I can't trust anything. Who's involved with this? And because I could imagine how frustrating that is. So no matter how good we are at building, if we don't know who's involved in our own team or the people building, we're going to still break that trust. So, and making sure our content's relevant. So again, quick note on our template for manage, it's really dictated by our situations and, again, not necessarily a set trigger. I really want to say, like, this is something that you do on a recurring basis. It's something that you do maybe based on there is a business rule changing. We know we need to check reports once a week to see what's content available. We need to meet with certain leaders at the different departments, say, hey, are we adding new products? Are the product categories changing? When's our pricing changing? Hey, when are the sales reps going to go to different teams? Going through those conversations just to be on top of it. And it's a lot of communication. So we're going to go through kind of mini processes here, and we're going to call this maintain. And a quick example is basically looking at a certain time of the year or the month or week where you have every Monday, the second of the month, where depending how your BI team structured or your administration structured, some people have administrators of a workspace. So people who don't necessarily are the only people who create content, but they're the ones responsible for the content in a workspace. So they know what's in there. They know who can publish. Or it might be just one single admin to go through the workspaces and basically review. Is all this content look right? Is there anything in here that no one has developed, like no one that I know has published? So understanding who's publishing and creating. If there's a report out there that you've never seen before, is it up to date? Who's the author? Is there documentation on it? If someone, if there's a business rule that changes, how many times are things getting refreshed? And if something's not getting viewed, do we need to do something where we retire reports? And these are things you do on a reoccurring basis. Again, there's not necessarily set and now you do it. It's something that you have to kind of set for yourself to be reminded. So another part of this too is, what do you have a change management process or a way to understand how your company changes, how your client changes? Again, it's easy to say submit a ticket for a new report, but let's say again, product is changing their pricing. They're changing their SKUs and everything's changing. Well, how do you learn that that's going to happen? And again, this goes back to that, we live in we are involved in a very social part of the organization where we do need to know the right people. You need to know who's responsible for the product categories or who's responsible for sales reps. So over time, as expectations and processes implemented, people have to submit a ticket, or there's some meeting, or there's some repository where product categories are changing on August 1st. Here's the list. Okay, now you know there's going to be a change. There should be basically an understanding of, does this affect any of our corporate KPIs? What does this affect? And then basically, okay, so we know the business side of what this is going to affect. Now, what from the content side? Are there data flows that rely on certain SKUs? Are there DAX measures, reports with bookmarks that rely on this that now need to be updated so nothing breaks? Then there's that communication with your report authors, if saying, hey, we're changing this. We're going to be working on how we're going to migrate. And also, probably the most important part is, again, if it's Microsoft Teams or Slack, saying, notice, project SKUs are changing on August 1st. This will affect the data this way. If you need more, read here, link. I don't care. You could do whatever you want at this point. Personally, I don't care as long as you get the word out. But getting that understanding before it happens, and then as soon as it happens, saying what is this going to affect. So two very simple processes or examples of it that, again, are not necessarily top of mind because we're dealing with the next thing. We're dealing with the new report or updating a report. We're dealing with the desktop, the measures. We're looking at something online, like we might be learning Power Apps. But so this is not necessarily something that you're going to be alerted, like that's going to ring in your ear as much as build. But I think you can understand from here, if this breaks, then it doesn't matter how well you can build a report. Because if this breaks, your data is wrong and you might as well not build a solid report in the first place. Another one, mature, and we'll call this part of this maturity too, of however your BI team is structured. Understanding that, does every report have a purpose? Does every report have a author, a understood author, this person responsible for the report, and a stakeholder? If you're in a situation where every department or team has their own data analyst that builds their own reports and they don't want to hear from you, this is where I'm going to implore you to get leadership involved, some executive champion at your company where you do have a Power BI admin side of the company that has authority. You're going to find a lot of problems because no one's going to really want to listen if they have their own process, unless they have to. So this is that could be its own conversation, like a lot of these topics. But I do want to just kind of highlight that at this point, because now we're dealing with so many people that maybe do what we are doing just in a different way, try to find executive buy-in. Matthew Roach has spoken about this. Microsoft white papers have spoken about this. There needs to be someone who has authority on what should and should not be in Power BI. Again, no process, rules alone. So at this point, again, if there's any other questions or any other, see what you guys think.
No other questions, but James kind of talks to or speaks to here a bit about the worst part about having users that have gotten that, I can't trust this data, is they really just abandon it and walk away from it. It's really, and he was kind of echoing your sentiment earlier about like, it's really challenging to come back to those users and get them to start trusting your information and your data. So that's just, I would agree with that. One of the suggestions I might have with going along with that is, I think us as report developers or more of like BI experts is we have to kind of bring that audience along with us on the journey of us modeling the data. I don't think we can treat everything in this black box volume, this black box experience. I think that there's also some things here too where the data may be right, but the user knowledge is not there on how to use the reports, or they've never seen, like I'm seeing here now recently, like people are just expecting Power BI to do what they think it should do,
right?
But they don't really understand how it actually works. And so there's like a somewhat of a gap, and I've had problems where the data is just fine. it's not a problem with the data. You just didn't understand how it worked. So that was probably also a miss on my part of not explaining to you, like, hey, by the way, there's these things called filters. And like when you can't get the numbers to show up or you see a bunch of blank values show up on the page, first thing you should do is go look for where the filter is being applied, either on the side or somewhere on your report. Did you select something on the report page that caused everything to go blank? I can't tell you how many times I've gotten a call around like, hey, data's gone, broken. No.
Yeah.
User
Just
error, you're dumb.
Reset to default, refresh your browser, and it'll be fine. Yeah.
Exactly. So sometimes that's the issue in these cases. But again, it's you have to think about. I feel like I'm dealing with a large variety of user experiences. Some very knowledgeable and can figure it out themselves.
Mhm.
Others that need a little bit more hand-holding till they get comfortable with it first, and then they become more capable.
Well, here's the unfortunate part, Mike. No matter what, it's your fault. Like, and
It's always my
that's
fault.
just how. No, but I mean,
It's like program
that's
management. You have all the responsibility and none of the authority.
yes. Even if someone has the wrong filter applied, well, guess what? That means you made the report too
Too complicated.
So even if you can complain when you get home, that person's an idiot. They don't know what the heck they're doing. Well, guess what? If there's someone in leadership, no one cares if they don't know how to use it. It's on us.
Correct.
It's always on us. And
I
that's just
agree. I wish there was a better way to kind of educate quickly, right? I know how it works. I'm an expert in the tool. That's just comfortable to me. And so I feel like I need a faster method to, like, maybe it's just sit down and record a video of the report and be like, hey, here's how the report works. I'm going to walk you through all the things and talk you through, like, at a basic level. I don't know what it is, but there needs to be a faster way. It's too slow for me to do all this work on a report for, I don't know, days, and then come back with these questions.
You know what there should be? There should be a little toggle button that says, yes, turn on all of the helper. Where's Clippy? I want Clippy to come back in Power BI.
Turn on Clippy.
And be like the button that is like, hey, if you right click, you can drill through. Hey, if you do this, this action is enabled. Oh, look, here's end user documentation for how to use Power BI. And like, all I have to do is turn on the button. Yeah. There's your AI feature.
There's your AI.
Boom. Virtual agents all over that.
Right? Virtual agent.
Where'd my data go? You should check your filters, ding dong.
Did you intentionally try to remove all the data on the page? Do you know why you did that?
You know that?
No, Clippy, tell me.
Actually, that's a good answer though. Like the report should be smart enough to tell you when you've done that and said, oh, by the way, you've selected something on the page that has none of the values calculating. Like there's literally nothing on the page. We think you did something wrong. Maybe you want to do this. And there should be like little helpers like that help people figure out what's going on.
It's available, but it's also one of Marco Russo's 20 paragraphs down blog. Because I don't know if you guys saw.
He's already solved it.
I'm sure he's done something with. So, but it's also probably the most ridiculous DAX measure you ever seen with a single table that has no relationships. That has to be structured a certain way with tooltips. There's a good example.
Yeah, measure dump.
Yeah, so today the Azure Log Analytics dropped that you can connect to Workspace and basically we've talked about this, like all your query data, like what evaluations in a certain workspace are taking long.
Yeah.
Who's querying it based on in the service. And there's a template file. And that template file has on every visual, like the little, you can do the question tooltip on each visual, and then you enable that. They have like 7 tooltip pages per visual. And it's insane how long that takes. We're not going to go into complaining now, but we can save that. But but it's so I mean, there's ways to do it, but yeah, I agree. It's very difficult for someone to say, what am I looking at? Am I looking at the right thing? And what can I do?
So I'll bring up another point here. So James mentions in his organization, we're working on a system of checks and balances in the data so that whenever something is wonky in the data source, something's going wrong, the Power BI team gets an alert and the reports automatically display that there might be a warning with the information. I like that idea. I'm trying to think how tactically I would make that happen. And James, I hope you're just joining us for the second hour, which I think we're almost about ready to hit, for open discussion which I'd love to hear more about how you're doing that, because that sounds very helpful, honestly. Great comment on that one, though.
All right. I know
You got more slides, Tommy?
Keep it rolling.
You got more words?
Got some more words on a page. So got some more bullet points.
All right, coming back to the slides. So slides are back on, Tommy. You're good to go.
All right. So we're gonna kind of conclude it here, and we're gonna talk here about our grow. So we've talked about how we can build a report, how do we maintain accurate data. Now let's create that culture. We have built trust, we have established expectations. Now let's build a culture. So the grow process is really for us. I think more than anything, it's kind of like a twofold. It's one, you may have KPIs for every team, and every team may have certain KPIs. But how are we measuring success for our reports and for what we're doing? If we're spending 30 hours a week building Power BI reports, how do I know that's really providing value to the business rather than just me doing someone else's request? All the reports that we're building, are they actually affecting the business? Because that's the goal of a report, is to change behavior, alter someone's behavior where they're like, wow, I really shouldn't sell this or call this person anymore. We should spend money here. That's our job. We're really in customer support at the end of the day. Just we're a very enhanced customer support team. That's what business intelligence is, because it's helping people navigate their performance, understanding if they're doing the right thing. So are we doing that for the company? Are we doing that for our stakeholders? So how do we evaluate success? And then the other part too is, are people using the content? And to our point that we just referred to, how do we know? We can build all these great reports that are really simple, so to speak, but if people don't know that they're out there or how to use it the right way, it's like, oh, I didn't know there was a bookmark. I didn't know I could drill through and get everything that I needed that I've been so frustrated that I couldn't get. It was just right there. Because how do we know that people are empowered in their reports? So the growth process, think of the growth process like a campaign, not necessarily like a routine, but it's like almost like you're doing a marketing campaign at all times. It's a lot of micro things that you're doing, aiming for a better goal for this data culture. So real quick, we'll run through with just multiple things that you'd want to do where you're reviewing your usage analytics. By far, this is the easiest way to get your KPI, your understanding of, are people using Power BI. You can download the audit logs if you're a service admin, put into a report, compare your new reports being launched. Do they have what's the lifespan and the life cycle of any report that you build? Who's requesting reports? Who's looking at reports? Understand your data champions at your company. For any reports, doing some roadshows and trainings where they have easy access to learn more. So if they're looking at a report going, man, I feel overwhelmed by this. Oh, look, there's a Power BI Power Hour our company does once a month. That may be good to learn something new. Oh, look, on the ticket system, I can submit a Power BI ticket for support and get one-on-one training. I'm so glad I know there's custom training available here. Here's some step-by-step documentation. Oh, look, there's a lexicon of all the report catalog. So making it easy for people to access and request training and support. To be completely frank, and I am not pandering here, it's just how it is. As a few years back, when I was really, in a sense, frustrated because there wasn't a lot of resources on Power BI adoption. There was some white papers, but there's nothing on what it actually looked like. Chuck actually had an article from years ago that's on the blog that talked about what they did at Microsoft. And I took that blog I basically took that and tried to apply it as much as I could because it was a game changer. He showed, here's our kind of roadmap. We have a center of excellence. Here's what our website looks like for the BI team that shows news and announcements. All these different things to make it easy for people to get training and support and make it accessible to them. Again, I'm doing things where you're doing power hours. You're meeting with teams on a recurring basis. You have a center of excellence where all your documentation is stored. And then that constant feedback loop where you have things where you might do those discovery calls on a new report. Why don't you do a discovery call with a certain sales team or a certain marketing team every quarter? Just say, hey, what are your pain points right now in data? What are things that are coming up? What things can we help you with? So understanding people's needs, um, doing feedback forms on new reports, trying to garner that qualitative feedback on what are people actually doing. If you build drill through in every report and no one using drill through, that's probably a good indication that you shouldn't do drill through. But you won't know that until you actually ask for it, because most people that I've met are not going to come to your desk or Slack you and say, I don't like drill through. It's something that you're going to have to garner, you're going to have to gather. So again, no process rules alone. So wrapping up, just a few essentials. So these are the last few slides, and we're going to talk about is, regardless of what process you put in place, there's some essentials for each process that I would recommend, and then just universal requirements. So for build, you got to have some ticket system. Again, you can do Jira, Freshservice, ConnectWise, Power Apps, whatever, Dynamics, whatever you want to do. Have somewhere where people are centralizing and they must submit their requests with certain input that they have to put in. Do you do the scope and requirements, these questions that you ask them on why are you asking for this report? What's important? And so empower the stakeholders. If you know there's 10 people at your organization who look at Power BI every day, empower them. Help put them on, bring them to your side so they can be part of the promotion crew where they're saying, yeah, Power BI is great. This is how to use it. And then from manage, we recommend it's like, do you have a change management system or some process to understand new things that are happening? Do you know everyone's roles and responsibilities on the BI team? Who is responsible for your database? Who's responsible for marketing's reports? Who's responsible for data flows?
Nobody, because no one's using it.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
I am not getting. You will not bait me this time. So I will not.
I will not be distracted by that comment.
I will not be baited. And then grow. Like, where can someone get support? Is it easy for someone to get support? And how do we measure our success? Finally, our universal requirements, just things that apply across the board. Make sure we have universal roles and responsibilities. Get that executive buy-in. I wish I stressed that more. There's obviously a lot to cover here, but find someone who likes Power BI or loves it, that's in a leadership or has authority at your company, and explain to them why we need authority for the BI team. Be consistent. Do not stray. And understand the systems and applications you need to use to establish these processes. And finally, it's going to take time. Be consistent, be clear and concise, and over time, with the right leadership, the right people involved, this is something that can, again, change and transform a company where the requests coming in are clear. You're now building things that are transforming the company, and your value as an employee, your value on the team and the organization continues to grow. But more importantly, we're doing something that we know is worthwhile, that you're going to work every day and you're changing someone's behavior. And I do love that idea of, if they didn't have this, they would never be able to, make the decision that they made today. So, so finally, no process rules alone. Do not forget that. Thank you guys so much. And then obviously I will hand it over to you, Mike.
I am always flabbergasted by Tommy, by how many questions you can come up with, how quickly you can come up with them. And every time I'm like, I should just be writing this stuff down faster. So I just want to type out all these questions. So what we're going to try and do is we'll have to watch this video on 25% speed and write down all the questions that Tommy hammers out for us, because these are good. And per the people's request, we're going to try and shove these into a Git repo where we can have a place where we can go grab these. One of the things I couldn't find, I was trying to Google it, and I don't know, maybe Tommy or Seth knows where it is. There's the Power BI adoption framework, and I thought that was on GitHub. And
it's a Power Platform adoption framework. I don't think it's just Power BI.
Well, they should just start with the Power BI one, because that's the best one of all of them. really, realistically here. But I think that there actually is some additional really good materials that are in that. There's a lot of videos that go along with it, but I believe there's also it is a GitHub. Here, I did find it. I think not talking about it, I found it. So I'm gonna throw this in here. This is more about enterprise grade adoption across all the things, but just I'll put that out there as well. So now, Tommy, I want to say thank you very much for talking. This is a great topic, very close to all of our hearts as we grow Power BI and all of our organizations, things that we're doing. Everyone's, right now, this thing's hot. There doesn't matter what you're doing. If you want a career and you need to get a job, go figure out how to do Power BI, because right now there's not enough people to do all the work that it is growing that fast. I feel like we're hitting a very fast part of the curve where it's growing really quick, I feel like, and we need more people to be just generally knowledgeable about this. This feels to me like what we could be seeing inside Excel when Excel was new. I feel like I wasn't there. I was probably like a wee baby at that point in time, but like I feel like this is what it would have felt like to get there.
I think I'm going to disagree with you on that, but
Nope.
we'll leave it there.
Not allowed
but,
to.
Well, I think the great thing, we're still in this time with Power BI and the growth. I think it's that the window is closing. But if you're at your organization and there's none of this, there's no Power BI administrator, there's no Power BI champion, be that person.
Yeah.
Because, it will propel your own career.
Totally agree
it's something that's going to be needed, but like become that person. So I highly recommend that if that's missing at your company, become that.
And you can start that conversation with, do you want to make money or save money? Because I can do both those things with this tool.
Yes. Exactly. I think it's
legit.
It's a legit
Totally
statement. It's simple, but boy, does it really it's good, I think. All right, so with this, I think we're good to go. Actually, what we're going to probably do now is we're going to transition into the just hanging out and on a Teams meeting. So we're going to shut down the YouTube stream here. So for those of you who have joined, we really appreciate you hanging in there with us and listening to the user group meeting for tonight. If you want to continue talking, if there's some additional things that you want to ask James about how he's automating potentially some error notifications into his reports, we're gonna encourage you guys to come back out here and talk to us some more. I have the link here that I'm gonna put into the chat window, and this is a link to our Teams meeting so that everyone can join. And then with this, you will probably get kicked into the lobby at some point. So join the Teams meeting at this link. Let me throw it in there again. And then with that, thank you all very much for attending. We'll catch you next month, likely for another Power BI user group session. Tommy, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you guys so much, and thanks for everyone listening.
Talk to you in a little bit. All right, bye.
Bye.